Garth Ennis is one of the most controversial comic writers out there. The man has written The Boys, Punisher, Preacher, Hellblazer, Hitman, and a Dick Dastardly and Muttley series. This is real. He's my second favorite comic book writer, and he's gotten a lot of hate in these past years. Usually what happens is someone watches The Boys show, sees stuff from the comic, tries to read the comic, and decides that they hate him for the rest of their lives, usually without reading that much of the book or even getting to the end. While I do have criticisms of his work, his comedy can be too edgy at times. I disagree with a lot of his views on religion. His biggest problem is just cramming way too much lore and exposition into a story, killing the overall pace. This is a big problem in a certain arc in The Boys, but I do think he is a great writer, overall at least. What I'm here to do today is teach you how to get into Garth Ennis and tell you some of the books you should read, some of his best books. Let's get to the chase and just get with it. If you want to get into the Punisher stuff, start with Welcome Back, Frank. It was the beginning of his Marvel Knights run, and it's great. It's a great introduction to the character, and so is the first arc of Punisher Max, which is probably the dumbest and most fun arc from that series. Like, if you just want to be like, oh, Punisher's cool, you read that book. It's a good introduction. If you want something about the best of humanity instead of the worst, Ennis did the first arc of The Web of Spider-Man, arc called The Thousand, I think. It's about Spider-Man's relationship with Aunt May and also dealing with a childhood bully who knows that he's Spider-Man. It's one of the more lighthearted Ennis stories and is definitely his love letter to Spider-Man. Even kids can read it. Instead of a lot of the more dark art in a lot of his work, this has a much more kid-friendly look and works better with the story, and so it just makes it more accessible. Preacher is also a very good series, but personally I think it peaks at the Angelville arc, which is at the end of the first volume. Overall fun series in my opinion, but I don't have that much to say about it. Punisher the Slavers is a great comic for people who say, actually the Punisher in the comics is a bad guy. You're not supposed to support the Punisher or think he's a good guy. He's actually a bad guy. He's not good. You didn't get it. Usually those people haven't even read the comics either. In the Slavers, the Punisher goes up against human traffickers, and it goes pretty in-depth into the true evil of human trafficking. Remember when in Sound of Freedom they didn't kill any of those evil people? In the Slavers, Punisher massacres them brutally and gloriously. It goes pretty in-depth on what the Punisher represents and why the people he kills deserve it. If I have one issue with the comic, I think the main villain's death isn't as creative and good as another villain's death in the book, but I won't spoil it. It's overall a great book. A tougher read than some of the other stuff on here. So a common complaint I do understand is with the comedy of the Boys comic. Like, I think the Boys comic is kind of a masterpiece and Ennis's ultimate statement on the war on terror and superheroes, but some of the jokes don't completely land. In the Boys prequel comic, Butcher Baker Candlestick Maker, he fixes this by removing most of the humor and just telling a brilliant origin story. It is the origin of Billy Butcher, a character who Ennis has said himself is his favorite creation. And with this book, you see why. I really want to make a video on this, and also the arc in the Boys called The Innocents, which are two of the best examples of Butcher's depth as a character. I read Candlestick Maker after finishing the whole series, and it does help a bit because it does set up the last 12 issues pretty perfectly. It goes into how a man like Butcher can be born and the evil he has within his heart. It shows why he would be willing to do the things he does at the end of The Boys, and what Becky, his wife, who was killed by Homelander, meant to him. Becky's pretty much the only reason he's not the most evil man on the planet Earth. The Becky's Diary section of the book is still the best scene in anything The Boys related, and the comic is one of Ennis's masterpieces in my opinion. Another great example of why prequels rock. Some other Punisher books, Widowmaker is damn, I don't think I can talk about it. It's probably my favorite Punisher comic, but it's way too dense to talk about in a video like this. I just say go read it. Don't look anything up about it. Just read it. It's only 6 issues, but it's something else. Punisher Soviet, on the other hand, is also a masterpiece. It's kind of a one last ride for Ennis and the Punisher. It's about the Punisher becoming friends with a dude and finding understanding with another man and having to face the consequences of that. It's great, but there are like no trades out there, and the ones that do exist are nearly impossible to find and very overpriced. So get it digitally because it's worth buying. Like, buy it because I want Marvel to print it again, but I ain't gonna spoil anything. Has my favorite punishment in any of Ennis's Punisher comics. I'll say that. Now, probably the best thing Ennis has ever written is Hellblazer Dangerous Habits. Dangerous Habits was Ennis's first arc on the book, and was made as a sort of way for him to impress readers in editorial. This was his first big book outside of 2000 AD, so he kind of wanted to give it his all, and he did. The plot is high concept. Constantine has lung cancer and is trying to fix it. even if he's going to hell. It's a book about mortality and how we deal with it in an increasingly nihilistic and atheistic world. John is the scum of the earth, and he's using this punishment to crawl out of it and discover who he really is. It's a beautiful arc with incredible art and an unforgettable tone, and it's just an amazing story. It's most notably the basis of the Constantine movie, which coincidentally is the best adaptation of Ennis's work in my opinion. It's so good even Linkara likes it, and he hates Ennis. I could go more in depth into it, but it's just something you have to go read. Like, if you want to get into Hellblazer, and if you want to get into Garth Ennis, read this book. 6 issues. It's collected in most Hellblazer volumes. I believe it's volume 5 that's at the end of, but it's just the beginning of Ennis's run. And just read it. It's, in my opinion, one of the greatest comics ever written and the highlight of Ennis's career. If you want to know how good Ennis can be, read these 6 issues. The rest of his run is also good, but it really peaks here. And when I mean it really peaks, I mean this is it. This is the best Ennis has done, in my opinion, personally.
This comic does not suck. There's a reason why it's so critically acclaimed and beloved. If there was a book out there to try to get me to like John Constantine, to get me to enjoy the character and read more, this is the one to do it. I'm still not that into him or really want to read up more, but if I had no other exposure to him before this one, it'd probably have made me into a fan.
This is just supposed to be a list of stuff you should read, not a full defense or essay. Maybe they'll come in the future. If you were wondering why I didn't recommend Hitman, that's because I haven't read all of it, but I like what I've read of it. But shout out to the Hitman guys out there. But yeah, give Garth Ennis' work more of a chance. And the boys comic is better than the show. Later.